This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Now that school is in session, colleges are seeing more empty seats this year. There are 4 million fewer college students than there were a decade ago. Among students who graduated high school in 2016, 70% began college that fall. In 2020, that number dropped to 63%. There are a few possible explanations for this. Some people point to the pandemic as the main factor, as many students may have pushed college off until later to avoid learning from home in their high school bedrooms. And while this could be part of it, the decline of students started long before many of us ever heard of COVID. We have to consider other factors like cost. A Georgetown report found that between 1980 and 2020, the price of tuition, fees, and room and board for undergrad students rose by 169%, while wages for young Americans haven't increased at the same rate. So many people simply may not have the money or aren't willing to go into debt. Student loan debt is close to $30,000 on average for 4-year college graduates. Although higher education experts say it's important to consider the long-term trade-offs. Data from the Social Security Administration says that people with bachelor's degrees earn between $600,000 and $900,000 more over the course of their lifetime than someone with just a high school diploma. Data is scarce on how that advantage compares to previous generations of college graduates. We sat down with Talani Britton, a professor who studies the economics of higher education, to unpack this a bit more.
I don't think that it's simply like, get those loans, you're going to be fine long term. So I don't think that's quite the case. And at the same time, I also think, well, what are the other options? And are those other options, both in the short term and long term, as beneficial?
Let's take a look at those other options. One alternative is students going to a community college for 2 years and then transferring to a 4-year school to offset costs. But only 8% of community college students who want a bachelor's degree go on to achieve it. They face common roadblocks, like finding out most of their credits won't transfer, and they'll have to start from scratch at a 4-year school to get a degree. Another option is trade school. Programs in trades like construction, HVAC, and mechanics have seen an increase in enrollment as high as 40%. The highest paying trade jobs can make up to nearly 6 figures. There are also apprenticeships where companies pay students to learn how to do a trade, which sounds like a win-win to me. And if community college or trade school don't tickle your fancy, you can also go straight into the workforce after high school. Minimum wage jobs that don't require any degree or training have seen an increase in pay. About half of states raised their minimum wage this year, and a lot of companies decided to raise it on their own in recent years. But as those wages have risen, so has the cost of everything else due to inflation. Experts wonder if the short-term gain from going straight into the workforce is worth it over pursuing post-secondary education.
Some of the questions that I would ask are the jobs that they're taking currently, do they have advancement potential? If we think about those same jobs in 10 years and they're paying relatively similar salaries, would they be able to support themselves and a family? What does it mean for their potential children, for example, if they don't necessarily return and get a college degree?
There are also long-term benefits to getting a degree that experts say are important to consider, like better health outcomes, both mental and physical, and the lower likelihood of being unemployed. Jason Lane, a dean at Miami University in Ohio, told us that as fewer students go to college, this could have long-term impacts for our society as a whole.
The loss of individuals going into college will have long-term implications on the country's innovation ecosystem, on our economic productivity, will make it harder for us as a country to compete internationally in terms of new knowledge development, new innovations, new inventions, things that the U.S. has historically led on.
So what can be done to get more students back to school? Education professionals say high schools and colleges can work together to close the information gap and make sure students and their families have all the information they need to make informed decisions about post-secondary education. There's not only a gap in general information about college, but gaps in information about financial aid and how to get it. A study by ACT found that most students don't understand the financial aid process.
We also need to think about it's not just the traditional high school population. We've got to be reaching out to adult populations, folks who are looking to retool, to reskill, who are looking to increase, I think, their own social mobility and economic viability. in the economy. And so to do that, we've actually got to be more accessible. We've got to find new pathways and entry points for them to come into higher education.
To unpack what breaking down some of these barriers looks like, we're bringing in Noah Meyer, the president of Rooted Alliance. Rooted focuses on helping students in rural communities with post-secondary plans. Last year, in schools that take part in their program, they saw college enrollment rates increase by an average of more than 10% since before they stepped in. Noah, thank you so much for joining us. To kind of kick things off here, can you tell us about your program and how it works?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So we believe every student needs more than a high school diploma to survive in today's economy. We know that 84% of jobs in the US require more than a high school diploma. So Rooted places dedicated college and career advisors in rural high schools to work alongside the guidance counselors to help provide support for students to figure out the right fit for them after high school, whether that's a 4-year program and degree, a 2-year program, technical school, or enrolling in the military. An adult who is experienced and focused on helping students figure out a plan is in place to help these rural students. Advisors have students lined up at the door seeking their advice and help. Sometimes it's for help writing an essay or getting a letter of recommendation. They also arrange for visits to different campuses so students can see what being on a college campus is like. More than 60% of the students in rural America choose to stay close to home for their post-secondary pathways. And a lot of the work that they do is helping students figure out how to afford to pay for college. So it's both filling out financial aid forms and accessing scholarship dollars that they may not even be aware exist for them.
You've mentioned quite a few ways that you all help these students. One of the things that I'd like for us to do here is kind of pull back the curtain and really dive into barriers that students are facing. You know, what barriers do students in rural America face when making post-secondary plans that other people aren't really dealing with?
Rural students are at a disadvantage when planning their lives after college. Poverty in rural communities is high. It's about 2 times the national average. And rural communities have fewer college-educated adults, which means that there are fewer experienced adults to help guide them towards what's available and the right fit for individual students. And we also know that rural students are the least likely to enroll in and complete college. So they face some unique barriers. And we also know that only about 7% of philanthropic dollars go to address the needs of rural communities. So there are far fewer supplemental supports that are designed to help the unique needs of rural students that might exist in urban areas.
I'm curious to know, what systemic changes can be made to make college and other post-secondary options more accessible?
We actually think that providing the right kind of advice for students is where it all begins. Helping students understand what the best fit is for them. There's not one size fits all for anybody. And so having an adult who can really help students expand what's possible, that expertise is crucial. It's also true, and there's been a lot of reporting on the cost of college. We know how expensive 4-year programs are, and we know that a lot of people take on debt. And if they don't complete college, they are stuck with the debt without the benefit of the degree that enables them to earn the money to pay off the debt. And Rooted advisors do an excellent job of helping students figure out what financial aid they're eligible for and connecting them with scholarship dollars that are available to help defray the cost of post-secondary opportunities.
Noah Meyer is the president of Rooted Alliance, a nonprofit that focuses on helping students in rural communities with post-secondary plans. Noah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.